I was sitting on the couch with a fork in one hand and a reheated piece of leftover lasagna in the other when I noticed the time, 8:42 a.m. She had already been downstairs, in and out of the kitchen, quiet but not secretive, just a bit too measured. I remember noticing how calm she was that morning. Not the usual chaos of a weekday rush, not even the low-humming tension of a brewing argument. No, this was something else entirely. The kind of calm that feels rehearsed. That's what stuck with me. She walked past me twice. Didn't say good morning. Didn't look at the food on my plate like she usually did with that judgmental half-smirk. She was dressed. That's the first thing that actually made me put the fork down. Dressed like she had somewhere to be. I asked, "You going somewhere?" She didn't look at me, just opened the fridge like that question wasn't worth answering. "Later," she said. That was it. A few minutes went by. I heard a low, sharp honk outside. One tap. Not the kind of honk someone makes when they're lost. It was the kind of honk you make when you've been invited. The kind that says, "I'm here, come out." I stood up, walked to the front window without making a sound, and pulled the corner of the curtain back. That's when I saw the car. Not a neighbor's. Not anyone's I recognized. It wasn't just parked, it was angled slightly toward the house like the driver was ready to make a quick getaway. I couldn't see his face, but I saw the nerve. I didn't say anything. I just turned, leaned against the window frame, arms crossed, waiting to see what she'd do next. She came down the stairs holding her phone in one hand, keys in the other. Her mouth opened before her eyes even met mine. "Nick is outside honking. Let's go, I'll introduce you." Just like that. No build-up. No explanation. No sense of how ridiculous she sounded. She didn't laugh. Didn't try to soften it. She just dropped that name, Nick, like it had always been part of our vocabulary, like it made perfect sense that a man named Nick would be parked outside our house on a weekday morning, honking for her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. I looked her dead in the face and said, "If he steps 1 foot near this house, I'll break his jaw. And if you leave now, you'll carry that regret forever." She blinked. Something flickered in her eyes, but it didn't last. She tilted her head, not confused, not scared. Just calculating. She weighed what I said like it was a game. Like I was one option on the table and Nick was the other. She looked past me to the door. Then to her phone. And I swear to God, she smirked. Just the smallest twitch in the corner of her mouth. Then she walked. Didn't run. Didn't argue. Just walked. Opened the door like it was any other day. No backward glance, no hesitation. Like whatever was waiting for her out there was worth leaving without a single word more. She closed the door behind her. And that sound, the soft click of that latch falling into place, rang louder than a slammed one. I didn't follow. I didn't watch from the window. I just stood there, staring at the spot where she had been, the echo of her voice still hanging in the air. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. But there was this cold clarity settling into me. Not numbness, clarity. Whatever came next, I knew something had just broken that wouldn't be fixed. And I was ready to meet it. I didn't move from that spot for at least 10 minutes. The silence in the house felt different. Not peaceful. Hollow. Like something had been dragged out of it by force and left everything behind, sagging inward. I could still hear the low hum of the car engine outside, but it was fading. Not because the sound was quieter, because it was sinking into something darker. He hadn't stepped near the door, and that meant he heard me. He knew I saw him. And he knew I meant it. I didn't rush to my phone. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even sit back down. I just stood there, heart locked, mind alert, like every nerve in me had been flipped into survival mode. Something had snapped into place. That line she crossed, it was real now. Not theoretical. Not a suspicion. She walked across it in broad daylight with her head high. At 9:06 a.m. I picked up her laptop. I don't know what made me do it. She had left it on the kitchen counter the night before. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she thought I wouldn't touch it. Maybe she wanted me to. It wasn't locked. The screen woke instantly. A browser was open, some thread about flights to Arizona. Random. She wasn't from there. We'd never even talked about going there. I clicked the history. Then everything started to turn. There was a trail. A whole damn trail. Not even hidden well. Private messages. A saved folder of screenshots. A text doc titled Nick Plan. The tabs were still open. One of them was a long message, half-written, like she'd been preparing a script. Not for me. For him. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I didn't want to read it, but I couldn't not. The first line hit like a pipe to the ribs. "I need to know you're still sure. I'm doing this for us, not to play some game. He won't see it coming. Us. Not I, us." That was when the air went out of the room. Every other word blurred after that. She was calling this man safe. Saying she was tired of pretending to be a wife. She wrote about our dinners like they were lies, about our home like it was a trap. There was a full itinerary, dates, rides, where she'd stay, what she'd tell me. And then at the bottom, the kicker, he'll either crumble or explode. Either way, we'll be free. I stared at those words. Not because I didn't understand them, but because I did. She didn't just walk out. She planned it. She wanted to break me, measure the damage, and feel clean walking away. It wasn't just betrayal. It was design. I closed the laptop, sat down at the table, and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because something inside me had burned through shock into something else. Something sharp, controlled. The kind of laugh that comes out when you realize the person you shared your bed with had been practicing their exit for months and they thought you wouldn't notice until it was over. She was wrong. I wouldn't wait for it to be over. It wasn't the end. Not by 10:15 a.m. I had already packed a bag, but not for leaving. For seeing. For learning. For documenting. I wasn't about to confront her half-blind. She thought she had the upper hand, and maybe she did for a minute. But now I had her playbook. And if there's one thing I've learned from being lied to, it's that the truth doesn't set you free, it arms you. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't text a friend. I didn't call family. I wanted the silence. I needed it. The silence helped me think, helped me cut through the noise she had built around me for months. Because once you see the rot, you can't unsee it. And I wasn't interested in being a man on his knees begging for reasons. I wanted evidence. I wanted the whole thing laid bare. So I drove. I didn't know exactly where she was headed, but I had enough from her laptop to follow the scent. Two names in particular stood out, the Cypress Inn and Eagle Park trailhead. Both marked in that itinerary. Not romantic. Not obvious. But just remote enough for a rendezvous. Smart. Predictable. I parked 2 blocks away from the inn and waited. It was a small, upper-middle-range place, nothing flashy, no pool, nothing that screamed luxury. The kind of spot someone would pick if they wanted privacy, not attention. That told me enough about Nick. At 11:42 a.m. she showed up. She wasn't alone. He was already there, waiting by the side entrance, leaning against the stucco wall like he owned the damn building. I'd seen him once before, though I didn't realize it at the time. A mutual friend's party months ago. He was loud, smug, one of those guys who talks in constant punchlines like every sentence is an audition. I remember thinking back then he's the type women either avoid or fall too fast for. Now I knew where she landed. She hugged him. Not tight, not romantic, but familiar. Like they had done this before. Like she didn't care who might see. That was what got me, the casualness of it. Her ease. The comfort in her betrayal. This wasn't spontaneous. This was routine. They went inside. I waited. And during those 2 hours I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I opened a notepad app on my phone and started writing down every little detail I'd noticed the last few months, how she'd started locking her phone at night, how she'd stop mid-sentence like her thoughts were somewhere else, how she used to ask about my day and suddenly didn't care if I spoke at all. Patterns. Rehearsals. Signs that I had dismissed as stress, as boredom, as the lull of routine. But they weren't. They were rehearsals for departure. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was phasing me out. I saw them come out again at 2:07 p.m. They didn't kiss. She handed him something, looked like a small envelope, and he stuffed it into his coat. Then they parted ways. Just like that. She walked to her car with her phone already back in hand. He walked the other direction, keys spinning on his finger like a teenager who had just scored something he didn't deserve. And still, I didn't confront her. I followed her. She drove across town, stopped at a pharmacy, grabbed a drink, then went home like nothing had happened. She didn't look around. Didn't check her mirrors. She was that confident. I didn't go in. I sat in my car across the street and stared at the house we built together. And all I could think was, you brought him into our lives. You sat across from me at dinner while planning your exit. And you thought I'd never know. She thought the game was over. She had no idea it had just begun. That evening, I went home just before sunset. Quiet. Calm. She was already in the kitchen reheating something in the microwave like nothing had happened. She didn't ask where I'd been. Didn't even glance in my direction as I walked past. That alone told me everything. She thought I wouldn't bring it up. She thought I'd swallow the silence. But silence wasn't the plan anymore. I didn't speak. Not yet. I let her go through her little routine. Play couch TV? Her usual trashy reality show playing on low volume. She pulled her knees up like a teenager, scooped food into her mouth without tasting it, eyes locked on the screen but not really watching. She looked peaceful. That fake peace people wear when they've already detached from their consequences. So I walked upstairs. I opened the bedroom closet, pulled out the old black shoebox she kept at the back behind the travel bags. She didn't know I knew it was there. She hadn't opened it in months, maybe longer. Inside was a stack of old photos, birthday cards from exes she claimed she had thrown away, and a few dusty journals with pages either ripped or blank. But under it all, neatly sealed in a plastic zip, was her second phone. Burner style. I'd seen it once by accident 2 years ago. She told me it was for emergency work stuff when she had some short freelance gig. She made a whole performance of leaving it dead and untouched. But I recognized the case immediately. Beige leather. Slight tear on the side. It was like finding an old weapon buried in the yard. I powered it on. No password. And the second it lit up, it all poured out: texts to Nick, texts to another number 2, a woman named Carla, possibly a friend or a co-conspirator. They talked in code, but it wasn't clever enough. They had names for me: the ghost, the anchor, the echo. She mocked the way I did the dishes. The way I folded laundry. There were entire threads about how she couldn't stand my optimism. My silence. My good guy tendencies. Carla even wrote, "He sounds like a pet you haven't had the heart to put down." That one cut deeper than any admission of love to Nick. They didn't just want to leave. They wanted to diminish me. Degrade the man I was. Reduce me to some stupid idea of weakness they could push around behind closed doors and smile through in public. So I put the phone back. Every message, every word already burned into my mind. Then I walked downstairs and stood in front of the TV. She didn't look up at first. Just said, "Move, you're in the way." I didn't move. That got her attention. She lowered the remote and raised an eyebrow. "What?" I kept my voice even. "You had a good afternoon?" Her face didn't twitch. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I mean," I said, "was the motel comfortable?" There it was. That flicker. That tiny slip in the mask. A heartbeat of fear. She recovered fast, though. "You followed me?" she asked, like she was the one owed an apology. "No," I said. "I followed the trail of your arrogance." She stood up. "Don't talk to me like that." "Like what?" I asked. "Like someone who's been lied to? Manipulated? Watched you plan your exit while I cooked your meals." "Stop being dramatic," she snapped. "Nothing happened. You're paranoid. You always have been." She actually smiled at that last part. Like she thought she could turn the whole thing into a gaslight campaign. So I walked over to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and spun it around toward her. I had synced her messages. The ones to Nick. The ones to Carla. Screenshots, backup files, even voice notes she sent thinking they'd stay in that dead-second phone. Her jaw didn't drop. She didn't scream. Instead, she let out a slow, almost impressed exhale, like I had finally proved I was worth her attention. "You went digging," she said. "I went looking," I corrected. "There's a difference." Her voice got cold. "So what now? You want me to beg? You want to yell and play the broken man?" I looked her in the eye. "No," I said. "I want you to realize that this time you underestimated the wrong man." And in that moment, she finally blinked. Not in guilt. Not in shame. In uncertainty. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure what I was going to do next. She stood there across the room, arms folded, like she was waiting for me to make a mistake. Like she was preparing a counterattack she hadn't yet written. But I didn't give her the opening. I didn't shout. I didn't lunge. I let the silence do the leaning. "What do you want from me?" she said finally flatly. Her tone was part boredom, part challenge. I could feel the years of this marriage, every unreturned touch, every dismissive shrug, every moment I told myself she was just stressed, compacting into this moment. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even pretending to be. Her eyes were dry. Her mouth was taut. But underneath, I saw it, she was testing how far she could go before I cracked. So I didn't answer her question. Instead, I asked, "How long has it been?" She looked away. Not because she was ashamed, but because it annoyed her to have to explain. "It doesn't matter." "It does to me." She rolled her eyes. "A few months." "Lie. How did it start?" "You're really doing this?" she scoffed, pacing a little now, trying to control the narrative with movement. "You want every detail?" "What?" "You want to know if I felt guilty the first time?" "No," I said. "I already know the answer to that." "Then what? You want me to perform guilt for you? Cry? Break something? Make a scene so you can feel like the victim?" "You are describing things I never asked for," I replied. "But thanks for letting me know where your head is." She stopped. Looked me dead in the face. "You think I plan to fall for someone else?" "Yes," I said. Calm. Clear. "You wrote the schedule." Her mouth opened, then shut. The crack in her performance widened. "You don't understand what it's like to feel trapped," she hissed. "Trapped?" I repeated. "You had freedom. You had support. You had a partner who believed in you more than you believed in yourself. You weren't trapped. You were bored. And you couldn't stomach the idea of being ordinary." She flinched barely, but it was there. Because she knew I was right. She didn't want out because I mistreated her. She wanted out because she missed the thrill of being wanted by someone new, someone who didn't know her patterns, someone who saw only the shine and not the wear. That was the worst part. She left not because I failed her, but because I saw her too clearly. I walked to the drawer near the pantry, opened it, and took out the manila envelope I had filled earlier that afternoon. Inside, copies of her texts printed, bank statements with charges linked to hotels and meals she told me were work things, and a letter I'd written the night before I even knew the full picture. A letter I had planned to read when I still thought there might be a version of this where we stayed. I tossed it onto the table. She didn't move. Everything's in there, I said. I'm not playing this out day by day. I'm not dragging this through months of awkward dinners and fake reconciliation talks. You don't want this marriage? Fine. You've already left it. And what? She snapped. You think you get to control the ending? You think walking away makes you strong? I'm not walking, I said. I'm cutting the cord before you get to burn the house down on your way out. She stood still for a moment too long, calculating again, like she was debating whether to explode or retreat. But she did neither. She turned toward the hallway and said over her shoulder, you think you've figured everything out? I didn't follow. I just said loud enough for her to hear, the thing is, you planned everything but the part where I stopped playing along. That night, she didn't sleep in our bed. She didn't sleep in the house. She left. Again. But this time, she didn't look like a woman in control. She looked like someone realizing the floor beneath her had shifted and she didn't know which way was up anymore. I didn't call her the next day. She didn't call me either. There were no apologies. No messages. Just silence, and for once I welcomed it. The house felt strange, yes, but not the kind of strange you mourn. It felt aired out. The tension she used to carry in her voice, in her glances, in the way she dropped things just to make noise, it was gone. The absence wasn't peace, but it was clean. Around noon, her sister showed up. Not unexpected. She knocked once and walked in like she always did, no invitation needed. I was in the living room. She looked around like she expected to see blood on the walls. Where is she? She asked sharply. Not here. You kicked her out? No. She walked. Like she planned to. Her face twisted. You don't know everything. I laughed. Not loudly, not bitterly. Just enough for her to hear how far gone I was from playing their games. I know enough. Want me to show you? I stood and reached for the same envelope I'd handed my wife the night before. Her sister waved it off. I don't need your little evidence folder. You think you're the only one who's been dealing with things? I froze. Not because I was shocked, but because the sentence had weight. She sat down like someone dropping a secret she'd held too long. She told me months ago she wasn't happy. That you'd changed. Did she mention the hotel rooms? The secret phone? The man she called her backup plan? Her eyes narrowed. That's not how she put it. No, I said. I imagined she left that part out. Her sister fell quiet. It wasn't a defensive silence. It was the silence of realization when your version of someone starts to crack and all the warnings you ignored finally demand to be heard. She's been different, she admitted. I thought it was stress. She wasn't stressed, I said. She was practicing a performance. And you were in the front row. She didn't argue. That surprised me. Instead, she looked around the room like she was seeing it for the first time. The framed photos. The souvenirs from trips we'd taken. The little bowl of change and receipts near the entry table. All the normal, forgettable things that make up a shared life. Where did she go? She asked. No idea. I didn't ask. I didn't chase. She nodded. Slowly. I'm not here to defend her, she said at last. But I'll say this, you were never loud. Never angry. Never controlling. Maybe that's what made her feel too safe. Too safe. The words sat between us like a curse. That's not an excuse, I said. That's a confession. We sat for a while. No more accusations. No more defense. She left with a quiet apology that wasn't about her, it was about the mess she hadn't known she was part of. And I sat back down with my coffee, stared at the living room, and thought about all the things we'd bought together. All the things she'd leave behind, not because they didn't matter, but because they were too familiar to carry into the fantasy she was chasing. At 6:43 p.m. I got a text from an unknown number. So you're going to make this ugly? No greeting. No name. Just those words. She wasn't asking. She was accusing. I didn't reply. At 7:05, another. You think you're the victim. You're not. At 7:16. Nick says you're unstable. You threatened him. I stared at that one. And I finally responded. Tell Nick if he wants to speak for you again, he can do it in person. No reply came. But I knew now where she was. And I knew something else too, this wasn't just going to be betrayal and heartbreak. This was war, and she had just made the mistake of thinking I'd lose it quietly. 2 days passed. No more texts. No calls. No return. Just a vacuum where a marriage used to be. And I didn't fill it. I didn't beg, didn't investigate, didn't send long-winded paragraphs into the void hoping for a scrap of regret. I let her sit in the silence she thought she wanted. Then Nick showed up. It was a Saturday, early afternoon. I was in the garage, sorting through old storage bins, half distraction, half detox, when I heard the tires crunch onto the driveway. I didn't recognize the engine sound, but the confidence in the parking told me everything. This wasn't a delivery or a wrong turn. This was someone showing up to make a statement. I stepped out and saw him getting out of the Mustang. Tight gray shirt, sunglasses he didn't need, expression cocked halfway between smug and defensive. He looked like a man who'd been coached, who had practiced what to say. "Hey," he said, hands up like a peace offering. "Don't worry. I'm not here to fight." "Then turn around," I said. "Because anything past that sidewalk is confrontation." He didn't move. "She told me you threatened to break my jaw," he said, like he expected me to laugh. "I didn't." "Did she also tell you I know everything? Or was that part left out?" He took off the sunglasses. "Look, man. I'm not trying to disrespect your home. You showed up here," I said. "That's already done. She's scared you're going to ruin her life." That almost made me laugh. She already ruined it. I'm just walking through the fire she lit. He stepped forward. Just 1 foot. I raised my voice, not yelling, but enough to make the air around us go still. "One more step and this becomes physical. And then I will break your jaw." "That's not a threat. That's just geometry." He stopped. We stared at each other for several seconds. He was younger than me. Not by much, but enough that he mistook bravado for strength. Enough that he thought he was fighting for some prize instead of inheriting a mess. "She said you were empty," he said, softer now. "That she was suffocating." I nodded slowly. "And you believed that made her brave for cheating instead of leaving?" "I didn't know it was like that at first." "You still don't," I said. "You think this started when you met her." "It didn't. You're just the exit sign she decided to follow." He flinched at that. "A small one. But it was real." "You should go," I said, not angry, just final. "You've already stepped into something bigger than you. Don't let your pride keep you in it." He hesitated, looked at the house, then back at me. "She said you'd try to make me feel small." "No," I said. "You did that to yourself the second you came here to defend a woman who couldn't even look me in the eye when she left." He turned and walked back to the car. No more words. No more threats. He drove off slower than he arrived. I went back into the house and didn't speak of it to anyone. Not because I was shaken, but because for the first time I realized what this really was. This wasn't about her choosing another man. This was about her building a world where she could pretend I didn't exist until I showed up in it stronger than she imagined. And now the image she painted of me for him? For herself? It was crumbling. One quiet truth at a time. The silence after Nick's visit wasn't the kind of calm that comes when a storm passes, it was the kind that settles just before something breaks again. I didn't hear from her that night, but I knew she knew he'd come. She was testing how far I'd let it go. How long before I snapped? She thought I was going to spiral. That I'd throw everything into chaos just to feel like I'd won something. Instead, I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted clarity. I laid it all out quietly, methodically. The evidence, the texts, the burner phone. The lawyer barely blinked. He'd seen worse. But when I told him she had mocked our life to her friends and referred to me as a convenience, he leaned forward. "She underestimates you," he said. "Let's make that a problem for her, not for you." So we prepared. I didn't tell her I was filing. I didn't warn her. I didn't make it a theatrical gesture. I simply moved. Fast. Quiet. Precise. 2 days later, I had the documents in hand. That evening, around 8:40 p.m., I heard her key in the lock. Yes, her key. She walked in like nothing had happened. Like it was still her house. Like she had the right to stroll into my living room after disappearing for nearly a week without so much as a conversation. She didn't even look around. She set down her purse, toed off her shoes, and headed straight for the fridge. I stood by the dining table watching. "Didn't expect you tonight," I said, voice low. She grabbed a water bottle, opened it, and finally looked at me. "I live here. That's changing." She leaned on the counter. "What, now you're kicking me out because I hurt your feelings?" I slid the envelope across the table toward her. "This isn't about feelings," I said. "It's about facts. Read it." She didn't touch it. "I already know what you think you have." "No," I said. "You know what you thought I'd never see." She laughed short, dry, arrogant. "You think you can just file and walk away like you're the one in control?" "I don't think it," I said. "I've already done it." Her expression didn't break, but her breathing changed. Subtle. Fast. Like something had landed on her chest. "You're just doing this to punish me." "No," I said, stepping closer. "I'm doing this so I don't spend another year living next to someone who watches me like I'm a failure and lies like it's a language." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "You cheated. You lied. You planned an escape while sleeping in the bed I built for us. And the only thing you regret is getting caught before you got bored of him, too." She flinched then. Not because she disagreed, but because it was true and she had no retort rehearsed. "You think I won't fight back," I said. "You think I'll crumble because I loved you too much to burn it down." I took the envelope and held it up. "But you lit the match. I'm just choosing what catches fire." She tried to keep her voice even. "And what do you think happens when Nick finds out you're doing this?" "I hope he does," I said. "Because when this is over, he won't see a woman who left her husband for love. He'll see a woman who walked out of one lie and dragged him into another." She stood there in silence, lips parted like she wanted to say something that might change the shape of the room. But nothing came. She picked up her purse and left. No screaming. No tears. Just the sound of the door closing behind her. And for the first time it didn't echo. It ended. I didn't watch her leave through the window this time. I didn't track her location, check social media, or scroll through old photos wondering where the moment had been lost. That stage had passed. The part where you look for reasons, or closure, or some hidden truth behind the betrayal, it was all behind me now. This was the aftermath. The reckoning. The next day, her lawyer called mine. It wasn't a conversation, it was a warning wrapped in polite language. They were concerned about the sudden filing, wished to discuss alternative arrangements, thought it might be more constructive to take a collaborative approach. Translation: she didn't expect me to make the first move, and now she was scrambling to shape the story before it reached her world. But it was already too late for that. Because the truth was leaking. Not from me. From her. Friends started reaching out one by one. Mutuals we'd known for years. Not close enough to take sides, but just enough to feel the tremor. They started sending vague messages. Hey, just checking in. I heard some things, wasn't sure if it was true. She said you snapped. That you lost it. That last one told me everything. She wasn't just spinning the narrative. She was laying the groundwork to frame me as unstable. The man who snapped. The man who couldn't handle rejection. The man who forced her hand. But I'd anticipated that. I had kept every message. Every file. Every photo. Every quiet breadcrumb she thought was invisible. I wasn't documenting to destroy her, I was documenting so I wouldn't have to. Truth is a funny thing. When you hold it long enough, you don't need to use it like a weapon. You just put it on the table and let people look. And that's exactly what I did. I called one person. Just one. Claire, an old friend of both of ours. Neutral. Direct. The kind who valued proof over drama. I invited her for coffee and handed her a folder. Said nothing. Just let her read. She stayed quiet for 10 minutes. Then she pushed it back across the table and said, she's been saying you were paranoid. Of course she has, I said. She said Nick was just a coworker, she was helping through something. Sure, I said. And the hotel was for paperwork. Claire didn't laugh. She didn't defend her. She just nodded once, slowly. I won't pick a side, she said. But I won't lie for her either. That's all I needed. One neutral thread in the web she'd been weaving. One fracture in her story. Because when people start realizing a lie costs them their own integrity, they begin to pull away. 2 days later, Nick called me. Blocked number. I answered anyway. You proud of this? He said. You've humiliated her. Everyone's talking. I paused. Let the silence stretch until it got uncomfortable. She humiliated herself, I said. I just stopped covering for her. You ruined her job. She used it to meet you. She's a good person, he snapped. No, I said. She's good at pretending. There's a difference. He hung up. And that was the moment I realized he wasn't angry because he thought she'd been wronged. He was angry because he was now living with the version of her she never wanted him to see. Not the flirty rebel. Not the escape fantasy. The real version. The schemer. The manipulator. The woman who couldn't stand still if she wasn't being adored. Now she had nowhere left to run. And I didn't need revenge. Because reality had finally caught up with her. It's strange how quickly everything can go quiet after months of noise. After weeks of discovery, confrontation, lies unraveling, lawyers moving, people whispering, there came the stillness I hadn't felt in years. The kind that doesn't come from peace, but from the absence of someone who never stopped performing. The silence after someone leaves who was only ever loud when they needed to cover something up. I sat in the living room one evening, the same room where it all cracked open, and I noticed the light falling different. The couch didn't feel smaller anymore. The walls didn't feel like they were leaning in. And that night, for the first time, I slept through until morning without waking up wondering if I missed a sign. She moved out officially a week after that final call from Nick. No drama. No slammed doors. No boxes left behind to cling to. Just a brief text from her lawyer confirming that property division has been acknowledged and accepted. That was it. Her entire exit from my life reduced to bureaucratic formatting. I never replied. The house changed. I changed it. I painted the entryway. Replaced the bed. Donated the wine glasses she always insisted were the elegant kind. I took down the framed wedding photo in the hallway not because I hated it, but because it was a lie. A still image of two people who never existed together the way that photo suggested. I kept it though. Not for memory. For warning. Nick? Gone. Whether they're still speaking, I don't care. I suspect he realized what she really was when she started turning on him too. She always needed someone to be the villain so she could be the victim. Once I stepped out of the role, he stepped in. That's the cycle she lives in. Always moving. Always deflecting. Always building new lies before the old ones stop burning. As for me, I've never been more clear. Not angry. Not bitter. Just sharp. I know now how subtle betrayal can be. How it doesn't always come in screaming matches or slam drawers. Sometimes it's quiet, soft, disguised as a tired smile or a vague excuse or a new dress worn for someone else's eyes. And if you're not paying attention, you'll start believing the lies just to protect the version of love you want to be true. But here's the truth no one tells you. Loyalty isn't a virtue when it's protecting a fraud. I gave everything I had to someone who saw it as a weakness, who studied my patience and my silence and my consistency like flaws to be exploited, who left not because she found something better but because she thought she deserved more for doing less. And still, I'm thankful. Not for her. For what it revealed. That I was never the echo. Never the ghost. Never the weak one. I was the gravity holding it all together. And once I let go, everything false around her fell apart. To anyone reading this, if you're staring at the cracks in your relationship and trying to convince yourself it's just pressure, just a phase, just stress, look again. Sometimes the person sleeping next to you isn't drifting away. They're building the bridge out while you're still carrying the weight. Let them go. And don't look back. Done. Let me know if you want a version of the full story in one file or formatted a certain way.